Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell, this is a Weird Wednesday, my once a month video where I do something that isn't necessarily bookish or writer related. And this month, since it is Pride and my birthday month, I decided to mix two of my favorite things together, and that is Pride, Pride related things, and mythology. So I did some very kind of baseline research. I wanted to get more into it, but sadly time did not permit me to do more research on it, as well as if I did research on mythology, I would be trapped in a very, very deep dark hole that no one will see me out of for the next few months. So yeah, but I found some interesting fun facts about ancient cultures and queer mythological beings and compiled them into a video. I have also left the links for all the articles that I took this information from down below if you guys want to check that out, as well as to see more of them, because I have only really been able to look at to pick and choose, because that would be a long video if I chose all of them. So let's get into it. Well, as you guys know, I am a big, huge Greek myth buff, so it's only fair and it makes sense for me to go ahead and introduce some of the mythological beings from Greece first, since they are one of the more ancient kind of civilizations. And this time, as you guys know, literally most of ancient Greece was LGBT friendly. They had stories of bisexuality. A lot of their Greek gods and goddesses were some form of bisexual, of pan, gay, lesbian, or something or other, as well as there are some non-binary and trans representation. Literally, Greece is probably the place to go. But to kind of go off of that, most of their Greek heroes, such as Achilles. Well, Achilles is one of my favorite ones, primarily because of his relationship with Patroclus, who they were both well known to be having a romantic relationship with, and while Homer never explicitly wrote it down, there have been many interpretations where they were actually lovers. There's even Heracles, who during his 12 trials had been known to take a various amount of male lovers during his time, and as we all know, he was the one who married Megara and ended up, killing her because he went crazy. Apollo actually had a male lover named Hyacinthus. I will leave the blog post to this story that I made about it from February down below, so you guys can get some baseline information on it as well. I am sitting on my legs, so the angle's probably all messed up now, but let me just reorient myself. Artemis was one of the virgin goddesses, and she was either written as asexual, but a lot of areas often depict her as lesbian, because she does take on female lovers, like romantic lovers. That makes sense. Athena also is one of the, I believe, also another virgin goddess. She was also written as either asexual or lesbian. On top of that, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, patron goddess of lesbians. So yeah. Pan, who was the god of music, also happened to chase both men and women. A lot of his depictions show him chasing both men and women, oftentimes quite inappropriately, with a rather large and erect. Dionysus, who was the god of wine and parties, also happened to be the god of intersex and transgender people. I haven't read a lot of myths where he does kind of involve himself in that area. I'm gonna mispronounce this word, but it's Hermaphroditus, who is the son of Hermes and Aphrodite, and he, I believe, is the earliest, they are the earliest reference in any ancient culture of an intersex person, which is really interesting to hear about, because a lot of the times we see people say, oh yeah, the LGBT community has been a fairly new development in modern situations, when in reality a lot of these things that we are not necessarily popularizing but bringing more attention to have been around since before a lot of modern concepts were here, and were more accepted than they were back then, which is says a lot about us as a people. Then of course there are the Amazons, who we all know Wonder Woman is a part of. The Amazons were a people of only women, and they really, I believe, once or twice a year they would bring men into their island for reproductive purposes, so they can have more children, but for the rest of the year they essentially kind of just kept to themselves and had romantic interactions and sexual interactions with one another. And finally, the last kind of myth that I will be touching is of Tiresias. And she was a blind prophet of Apollo who had been born a man but had been living as a female. She ends up praying to Apollo to change her from a man to a female and has that wish granted, and even gets a blessing from Hera and lives on to have a family and a spouse and all that stuff. And I believe they are one of the first. Hey you guys, so it's editing Therese popping in here just to quickly reword what I was trying to say. I confused myself in the middle of the video. I'm gonna sneeze 1 second. But yeah, I confused myself in the middle of the video and then tried to correct myself, but then confused myself even more. So I just wanted to pop in and correctly say the terms and explain what I was trying to explain. But essentially, Tiresias is one of the first few mythological beings to have ever referenced getting a gender reassignment in kind of ancient mythology. So there are other situations like this in the other parts that I will be talking about in the video continuing on. I think in the next section, which is like ancient Egypt, we get another one. So yeah, but that's essentially what I'm trying to say. But yeah, back to the video. The next one is the Philippines. This one's a little harder since like we haven't been keeping track of our own kind of older cultures. The Philippines, from my personal experience, has been very known for kind of trying to erase our more ancient cultures and going towards a Western monotheistic civilization when we were originally polytheistic. But for the most part, back in the day, the Philippines was well known to be very open and accepting of the LGBT community. A lot of the times they accepted them full face value. They were very welcoming of anyone who was trans and whatnot, and some of these members of the community would end up being in positions of power. But somehow it's really difficult to find these things because, like I said, we haven't necessarily recorded them, and they change. Like the different myths change so often between provinces. It's just really hard to keep track of, and I need to do more research on it before I can spew more shit. But there have been notes of Hinduism influences, primarily because in Hinduism a lot of their gods and goddesses are known to be on the non-binary or gender fluid spectrum. And if you look at some of the Filipino myths, the genders of certain gods and goddesses switch between provinces, and I think people kind of assume that the Hinduism kind of overall influence that. But one of the myths, and the only myth that I could necessarily find fairly accurately, is that of Sidapa and Bulan. Sidapa is the masculine form of death, and then Bulan, who is also, I believe, known as Nibulan in certain provinces, is the god of the moon. And back in the day, Sidapa had fallen in love with the moon and used like mermaids and fish and all that stuff and fairies to serenade Bulan and get him to come down. Eventually Bulan does come down to greet him and they fall in love. The problematic aspect of this is primarily that Bulan is depicted as an adolescent boy, whereas Sidapa is a full-grown man. But a lot of people tend to believe that that is due to a Spanish influence, that when the Spain came and like conquered, the only way for them to really like kick out this polytheistic concern to make them more Catholic and monotheistic was to kind of antagonize and demonize certain aspects of the mythology. So you'll see if you look this up that sometimes he's depicted as a young boy, sometimes as a teenager, or sometimes as a full-grown man. I think it just kind of depends on where you're going and which version of the myth that you are reading it from. So just a warning, but from my understanding, this was due to a Spanish influence when they came in and tried to, conquer us. So thanks a lot. Oh, and Bulan is also considered the patron deity of homosexuality. So, moving on, we are going into Egypt, and Egypt had a lot of their male gods were actually known for having, or a handful of their male gods had been known for having sexual relationships with other men as well. I believe Horus and Set are prime examples of this. We also have instances of trans deities or trans historical figures. Hatshepsut wow, Hatshepsut? There we go. Is one of the well-known emperors of, pharaohs, of Egypt, but she was born a woman, but in a lot of the hieroglyphs that we see, she has been depicted looking like a male and wearing male's clothing, so it is very possible that she was trans, and, you know, but unfortunately I think it was her brother who kind of tried to erase her from existence, so a lot of these things are currently missing, like a lot of the context clues and everything are currently missing from records. Then there is Hapi, the god of the Nile, who was in hieroglyphs depicted as intersex. Iphis was actually one of the mythological figures, was born a female, but to protect him from his father, who wished for a male heir, his mother dressed her up as a man, which, you know, kind of led him down this path of realizing that the man is where he wanted to be. He eventually gets betrothed to a woman named Ianth, and in an attempt to kind of to feel more like themselves, he prays to Isis, who grants him the ability to change from physically from a female to a male, where he lives off the rest of his life happily. And finally, the last set of mythology is from Hindu mythology or Hinduism. A lot of the gods and goddesses there have been known to be on the non-binary or gender fluid spectrum, so I will leave all the links that I found on this down below as well. But I need to do more research, so if something is inaccurate or only has been depicted in certain areas, I apologize, but Hinduism is not my forte. Vishnu and / Mohini is often depicted as gender fluid. Vishnu is the male variant and Mohini is the female, and I believe in a lot of Hindu myths, they are seen as shifting from Vishnu to Mohini. Then we have Shikandi, who was a warrior that was born a female, but from his father had raised him to be a male, and during that process he realized that he feels more comfortable in those pronouns and that body type and whatnot, and he eventually marries a woman, and after his bride's complaints, he runs off into the forest where he meets a yaksha, where they trade their genders, and he lives off as a man happily. Then finally, the last one is Agni, who is the god of fire, and he is often depicted as being married to the goddess Siva and the male moon god Soma. But yeah, that kind of concludes this video. It's a little bit more on the informational side than I expected, but like I said, some of these myths I'm not 100% familiar with, so I can't give you multiple depictions of it, as well as in situations it's also very hard to see, to read it, but there are more gods and goddesses than what I had just had listed, as well as myths and actual historical figures, so I will leave the links down below. I only chose the ones that I could fit into a very condensed video, but I'm sure that in the future I'll be making more videos like this and blog posts. But yeah, if you like these videos, hit like, subscribe. I upload these videos specifically once a month, but I do upload twice a week, so if you guys want to see more of these, let me know, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!